Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Svelte Radio. Today we have another guest for you all, but first, introductions. I'm Kevin. I run Svelte Radio and Svelte School, and I'm involved in the Svelte community in general.
I'm Shawn. Same here, I guess. I don't run anything, but I guess I've been working on recently the Svelte Actions package, trying to have a good set of defaults for Svelte to export so it inspires people to use actions more. That's me.
I'm Antony. I'm the CTO of Beyonk, and I'm also a Svelte maintainer, along with our guest today, which is Ben McCann, who is also a Svelte maintainer, a very, very recent one, in fact. Well, not that recent anymore. It's been a while now. So Ben has come in on the back of a huge amount of PRs. I don't know how he produces them so fast. And he's really pushed the development of Svelte itself, but also Sapper significantly forward. And what else? I mean, there's a lot to Ben. He's extremely polite and nice, and I really like that. It's quite refreshing to find a person. And I'll hand it to Ben. Ben can give a little.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you all today. Thanks for having me on the show. As to how I get so much done, I don't have a day job right now, so that gives me a little more time. I started a startup a few years ago, and so I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm in between companies right now trying to figure out my next one. And I picked up Svelte to kind of refresh my tech skills. And our startup, we were using Angular, and don't want to do that again. So it's trying to figure out what's new in the landscape. And I hadn't been coding for a number of years. I was in more of a management role. So I just wanted to kind of get caught up onto things, and really been using Svelte these past few months.
I'm just curious how you first heard about it, because it might, in someone in your position, you might just go for React as sort of the most popular framework of the day.
Yeah. So one of the ideas that I was experimenting with was for a content-based site where I thought that speed was going to be really important and performance was going to be really important. And so I really liked that with Svelte, you didn't have to download a runtime like you do with React. And so, the initial page loads were a lot faster. So that's kind of how I got involved. And then, with Sapper, there were a lot of other really nice performance improvements. And those were some of the first things I started working on when I got involved in Sapper. So, one of the things that we did was we added preload headers. So when you first visit a page, we'll fetch all the assets that you need for that page. So instead of having to wait if one script depends on another script, instead of having to wait for the first script to run and fetch that second script, the page will automatically fetch both of those at the beginning. And so we kind of crawl your dependency tree and make sure that those are all fetched at the beginning. And then, it's also got CSS code splitting, which is something that, had a few bugs in the past recent releases, getting that all worked out. But I think that's really gotten to a very nice place now where we have it's always had JavaScript code splitting, and now the CSS is really, I think, a lot easier to manage as well. And so with all that code splitting, it's been a really nice performance benefit of using Sapper.
One thing I want to ask, actually, I meant to mention the intro that you were an entrepreneur, but also, I believe, and I could be wrong here, but I think you're also a VC of sorts. Is that right?
I've been doing a bunch of investing as an angel investor. And so I've invested in probably about 24 companies at this point.
Wow. Very cool.
As far as I know, none of them use Svelte, but I'll spread the good word.
You gotta push for Svelte.
Yeah. Cool. Are there any successes yet of that bunch, or?
We actually have one of the first companies we invested in, a pretty interesting company. They're doing water-propelled propulsion in space. And they just announced that they're IPOing. They announced that late last year, and that should happen sometime Q1, we think.
Very cool.
Wow. I wonder how that works.
Yeah.
That seems that seems crazy.
It's got a lot of nice benefits. Like a lot of the chemicals that are used for propulsion traditionally are very toxic. And so that's probably not the main benefit of doing this, but it's a nice side benefit. So the idea is basically that, if you're going to launch a satellite into orbit or something on SpaceX, they kind of drop you into a number of like default orbits. But then if you want to get to your own custom orbit, they'll act as like a shuttle to get you to your final destination.
That's cool.
All right. So Sapper is at 0.28 right now. That's not the last version, right?
So we've got one more at least in the works. 0.29 is coming up soon. And, obviously there's been a lot of talk about SvelteKit. And so that's where a lot of the development focus is right now. But in the meantime, there's still a lot of PRs that we've been getting for smaller issues in Sapper that we wanted to try to get in and get another release out. So I think, probably the biggest highlight is for all our TypeScript users. We've gotten, I think, probably like 4 or 5 changes into Sapper 29 for TypeScript definition improvements, which will be a really nice quality of life improvement for our TypeScript users. TypeScript support's pretty new within Svelte in general, and so there's a lot of other places in the Svelte ecosystem where we've been making a lot of TypeScript improvements as well. But Sapper is definitely one of them. And then, I think the other place in Sapper 0.29 where we've seen a lot of improvements are in the router. So a lot of fairly minor bug fixes, but things that are just kind of nice usability improvements. There's been a couple scroll tracking bug fixes that we've gotten. And actually, seeing those come in kind of was a motivation. We ended up rewriting the entire scroll tracking in SvelteKit. And so...
oh, wow.
Those bugs are not in SvelteKit, but more importantly, there's a couple of edge cases that Sapper still has. If you navigate off the site and come back, the scroll might not be exactly where you'd expect it. It works pretty well in Sapper today, but in SvelteKit, I think we've taken care of all the different edge cases that we knew about.
So I'm gonna be the voice of the people who are less in the weeds, and since we have 2 people deeply involved in this, could we have a high level? What is the difference between Sapper and SvelteKit? Like a recap, because I think it's helpful for listeners.
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference, and feel free to jump in here, Antony, too, with your thoughts. But I think the biggest change in my mind is the developer experience. SvelteKit is built on top of Snowpack and ESBuild, and so you're going to see compile times be a lot faster. And that's something that's a problem in larger Sapper projects. You don't notice it necessarily when you start out as a new user with Sapper, but when you start to grow your project, some of the compile times with Sapper can get to be a bit longer. And our hope is to fix all of those issues and make it a really, really smooth experience with SvelteKit.
Yeah, I think I agree with that entirely. That's probably the biggest benefit, and it's definitely the one that I'm looking forward to the most. Which is so for a sort of context here, we have some pretty big Sapper applications, and at one point, one of them was taking 2 minutes to build when you first booted it, just to run into the dev environment, which is obviously really bad for local dev. Reload times were 20 seconds or so, which also kind of sucks. I did actually nail that down very recently to. I was using Svelte feather icons, which is a tree shakeable library of icons, but there's probably 400 icons in there. Svelte will still compile every single icon every time you use that whole library. So if you've got other libraries that use it as well, or other modules, it's going to compile all the icons, which only takes a couple of milliseconds, but it builds up. I basically took that library and I did deep imports, as Rich Harris and in fact the author suggested. I also then made my own little cut down version of that library, and it took my build time down to a sixth of its original build time. So it's now 20 seconds to start, and it's a big application. So that dev experience, that alone has made my whole development life a lot easier. SvelteKit, it should be like microseconds, right? It should be so tiny to get the application up and running. We've already seen in SvelteKit and Snowpack itself, changes you make, reload, they're instant. They're almost, you almost don't think it's happened because it's so quick. So absolutely 100%, that is the biggest benefit. I think the second benefit, which is also another place where SvelteKit came from rather, is so when you build an application in Sapper, everything is kind of treated the same way. You're building a dynamic web application. You can export it as a static site, but you've got those two options, and it's kind of one or the other, right? There's no middle ground. The idea with Kit is that it will build the application in a more optimal way. So you'll break out bits that are Kit will, for you, break out bits that are static and make them as static as possible. It will take bits that are dynamic and make them as dynamic as possible. And it will take out bits that are sort of in the middle and do the most optimal things. So you'll end up with an application that serves itself up in the most optimal way for what your application is, which should make it really, really nice to host and also cheaper to host and also more efficient to run. I think on top of that then, I suppose the other benefit to Kit is the modularity, which we're trying to break things into modules, whereas SAP is kind of an all-in-one. And then the final thing, I suppose, is the adapters. So the idea being it's serverless first, but not restricted to serverless. So you can host it anywhere you like, but it's designed so that you can host it on the serverless platform, which is probably the ideal hosting environment for this, very, very easily. The adapter defines your entire deployment layout. So there's a multitude of adapters, and you can basically just pick your adapter, run the keyword which is currently adapt, and it will convert your application into something that's suitable for where you want to host it. And I think those are probably the top 5 benefits. As to how close we are to the project right now, we're obviously all close, but Rich is the one who's currently using it in production. It's very much, of course, his project. And so I think that when it comes into beta, which will hopefully be soon, then there'll be some really interesting things in there that probably we don't even know about yet.
Yeah, I've been using SvelteKit today actually to build the new Svelte Radio website, and it's been great, except for like the issue of no documentation. But I mean that's expected, right?
Yeah.
It took me a while to figure out that fetch was actually something that came with the load function rather than using like a this.fetch thing. So that was.
I think currently it is. I think that's one of the things that's sort of, what do we do with fetch and load? How's that going to work? That's one of those discussions that kind of goes round and round a lot. I know Ben's been involved in that discussion actually.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some documentation coming soon. I actually have drafted a set of documentation just based off the Sapper docs and then updating it. And I'm sure I missed some stuff, so we'll need the community to give it a look and find all the changes that I missed. But so I've sent that out to the other maintainers and for review, and hopefully, I don't know if we're ready to publish it yet, but at least we're working on docs internally.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
It might be an interesting step to publish the docs without publishing the code, just to get like feedback before you actually, 1.0 the code. Yeah, it might be an interesting.
Yeah, we're definitely, I think, gonna need some feedback on the docs. I think, they're hopefully pretty close, but there's enough of them that I'm sure there are things here and there that we've probably missed.
So yeah, I mean, so an interesting approach that would be like a black box approach where you've got the product and you've got the documentation, but you've got no access to the source. So you only have the documentation to look at to figure out how things work. That's actually an interesting technique. I don't know whether it would be really frustrating or just, would be a really good exercise. But yeah, I guess if you don't have the source code available, you have to rely on the docs, and that could work. I don't know. I'm not sure
that should force the docs to be really good, though, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. They'd have to be. It's we could discuss it maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know when our next maintainers meeting is, but we can bring that up maybe.
Yeah, I think actually one of the things I'm really most excited about with SvelteKit as a maintainer, which probably doesn't sound exciting as a user, is that we've now got a configuration file, which is like kind of a obviously basic feature, but we had a lot of different PRs in Sapper that are in the queue that depended on adding some new configuration option. And we really wanted to find a way to do this holistically. Like a lot of these different PRs suggested different ways of configuring your project or whatever new option they were adding. And so we didn't want to have, half a dozen different ways of enabling any new feature. And so now we've kind of got one standard way of doing that with SvelteKit. And I think that'll unblock a lot of development efforts where, we wanted to come up with a holistic way of doing it before merging all these PRs. And so hopefully a lot of the PRs that are in the Sapper queue, we can revisit with SvelteKit and get those in.
And I think in terms of configuration, the holy grail for Rich is no configuration at all, right? But I think he's realized now that's probably not a possible thing because people have different use cases and the project is quite widely used now. And I think that one of the fallout you saw from not having a config file is that every other project that uses Svelte has a config file and they all use different formats and these different ways of doing things and different namings, different variables. So we've created this SvelteKit config file and almost defined the format of what Svelte config would look like. It's nice to be able to do that, I guess, but what it means is that you'll see a few other projects around, Snowpack being one of them, where their config file format for Svelte's actually changed based on the ideas from SvelteKit. So hopefully, we'll have reached we've kind of converged on this final config layout as much as possible, at least anyway.
It's very cool. This question actually makes me ask another dumb question, which is, SvelteKit seems spiritually much closer to Svelte than Sapper was. Like Sapper seemed like a different project altogether. Like it could have been run by a different maintainer. Is that, the config file is named svelte.config.js, right? Something like that. I think, right? Like it's not sveltekit.config.js. Like this is Svelte. Like are we essentially is the meta framework kind of just merging into the framework itself?
I mean, I think that there'll always be separate code bases and like you should still be able to use Svelte without using SvelteKit. But, for folks that are getting started, we want to have kind of a blessed path that makes it easy to get up and running. If you look at the Svelte FAQ today, there's like a question that says, what router should I use with Svelte? And there's like half a dozen different recommendations in there. And it's, I think, hard as a beginner to know what the difference is between all those routers and which one you should use. And in the future, that answer is going to be SvelteKit. And, we want to make sure that there's kind of one way to do development that works really well, that everybody's, put their eyes on and made sure that we've made it a good experience. And so you'll still be able to do all the things you can do with Svelte today and still build your own Svelte project without using SvelteKit. But, for folks that just want to get something running without having to put a lot of thought into having how to put all these building blocks together, we want to make that really easy.
So this makes me think of like an SPA mode. I think that's been something that's been missing in Sapper for forever, I think, right? So is that something that you could do with just one of those adapters in SvelteKit?
I don't know if it'd be an adapter or a new option, but it is something that I expect will be coming. We've got a ticket internally to build that. And so
nice.
I actually had a PR to do that in Sapper. And one of the things that got hung up was how do we want to configure this? And so I think that question's been unblocked now, and hopefully that's a feature that you'll see coming.
I think one of the problems with Sapper was that people really didn't know how it related to Svelte at all. Like Shawn says, it's almost like a different maintainer. It's almost like a different project. So I think one of the ideas with SvelteKit is that we bring together. It's a kit around Svelte rather than an application framework that happens to use Svelte, if that makes sense. So it's a series of tooling that allows you to take Svelte from a UI framework or a UI language or a UI library, whatever you want to call it, into something you can build a full app with. Sapper was Sapper App Builder, but it wasn't always clear that that's what it was for. And yeah, like Ben says about the routing and stuff, it was confusing. It's got its own router. Can I use that router externally? No, you can't, because it's kind of so core to Sapper because it does SSR and SPA and needs to be baked into the product. So yeah, so SvelteKit the idea being it's like an extension of Svelte. It's a superset of Svelte. It's a thing that sits around Svelte. Now, the caveat to this, of course, is that there is still a notion of a SvelteKit thing. So you have like attributes prefixed with SvelteKit. Things like Sapper no-scroll translate directly to SvelteKit no-scroll or kit no-scroll. I can't recall it actually, Ben. But the no-scroll attribute is prefixed with the kit notion because it's specific to kit, and it means nothing outside of that.
I've actually been looking at the changelog. There's not much in there in the SvelteKit one, but it's fun to see when new versions go out.
The SvelteKit changelog. Where's that?
It's in the. It is, yeah. You can find it on. I
actually didn't know there was a changelog. I've never seen it. So
is he talking about
nothing in it?
Yeah, it might not be updated.
Well, I mean, it seems to be updated. I should find it 1 second.
We're on like version 0.next 37 or something right now, I think, and it doesn't get released that often. So it gets a new master branch every like I don't know.
Yeah, the latest patch notes are prevent infinite loop when fetching bad URLs inside error responses, and handle assets path when pre-rendering.
These are quite recent, I think. Where are you seeing this? Is this like
a leak? I checked those in last night. I think that PM which we use is auto.
Oh.
It's set up with chain sets, and it's probably auto-generating the change log based off the commit log.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah.
It's unpackaged anyway. It's fun to see to look at.
Oh yeah.
Even though it doesn't make much sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, the changelog gets checked in. Yeah, fair enough.
All right, I've got a couple other sort of beginnery questions. Is the goal sort of one-to-one parity with Sapper, or do you think we'll have to lose anything? I know there'll be a migration path, but let's talk about, what's the trade-off? Like, what are we not losing anything? Like, is this?
Yeah, I think that's been one of the hard things with the development of Sapper is we do still get PRs to Sapper, and we've been trying to merge as many of those as we can. At the same time, there have been some that have proposed new features, and I think we don't want to be in a situation where people adopt a new feature on Sapper and then it's not present in SvelteKit. So trying to be really careful that any changes that we make in Sapper we're also making in SvelteKit, and they share a lot of code, but they're also different code bases, and so some of those changes are easy to port and some of them are not, and so it's been kind of a case-by-case basis to figure out which are ones that we can easily add to both versus which are things that we should just wait for SvelteKit and add them there.
Cool.
Yeah, I think Sapper's in a kind of like a maintenance mode, isn't it? It's in a mode where we still support it. We're still obviously interested in fixing bugs and things because people rely on it and it's time to migrate. But the idea being the migration path is so smooth that anything new can just go straight into Kit, and we have to have major features. That's the goal anyway.
The thing I've never been sure. I've never used ESBuild. I've looked at the docs, but we're essentially switching the bundler from either rollup or Webpack and then switching to ES Build. And like, is that a smooth process? Like, don't we lose stuff? Like, whenever I want to use something, in my tool chain, like I know I can either pick Webpack or Rollup and it'll probably work. But not when it comes to adopting ES Build, I have no idea.
Yeah. So if you use Sapper today, it's actually invoking your builder for you. And it's tweaking the builder in hidden ways too, so like Sapper has its own internal plugins that, I'm trying to remember exactly what they do now, but they, I think a lot of the stuff around like they inject your CSS files into your JavaScript files, and they do code splitting on your CSS, and then it pulls out information about your build in order to build the preload headers that are in Sapper. And so we're in kind of this tricky middle ground right now where you can configure your build, but you don't have complete control over it and you're not executing it. And I think that like there are parts of that hopefully are a little better structured in SvelteKit. So like one of the things that people have been asking for a long time is the ability to do basically what we've called adapters in SvelteKit, where like we've built these adapters to allow you to host on all types of different environments. And so like, we want to allow you to host on an environment that doesn't require Node, for example, or like we want to allow you to export to static pages or Vercel or Now or these different hosting platforms. And I think that was kind of tricky to do before. And so with SvelteKit, there are still parts of the build tooling that are not directly managed by Webpack or Rollup because they're managed by our bundling process. But now we have first-class support for all of these different platforms.
I think also when Ben talks about internal Rollup plugins and internal Webpack plugins inside Sapper, it's true. What you see in Sapper as a Webpack config or a Rollup config, it looks a lot like a Rollup or Webpack config, but it's not really. What it is it's a configuration file that one has some Sapper stuff injected into the output, so Sapper tells it where to put its files. But also the whole thing exports things rather than actually be run through Rollup. It exports things that Sapper then augments, and then that gets pushed into Rollup programmatically, right? So it's all kind of an illusion, really, with Sapper. It's very, very heavily tied to the internals of how it works. And I think SSR is one of those reasons for that. With SvelteKit, it is ES Build, but actually one of the core concepts of Snowpack, which is what ES Build is running through, Snowpack defines a no lock-in strategy. So you're not locked into using Snowpack when you build a Snowpack project. Therefore, you can remove Snowpack and build it wherever else you want. There's nothing specific there to Snowpack. And that stays true for SvelteKit. Not that you can rip out Snowpack necessarily, but because it's quite built in because of SSR. But what you're getting there is you're getting ES Build for your local dev environment whilst you're developing. But when you pump the build out either side and bundle for production, you're using just pure Rollup or Webpack, wherever else. I think it's got Rollup support now. I don't know if it'll have Webpack support, but it will have just pure output via Rollup. And also, as another kind of layer in direction here, the ES Build plugin uses the Rollup Svelte plugin. So therefore, you can actually adapt that because it's still compiling Svelte through Rollup, through ES Build. Oh. Right, so you're not really escaping from bundlers in the most common sense. Rollup is still there in order that you can pull things into your ES Build and they get converted to JavaScript, and then the JavaScript is what ES Build is compiling. But that's all in dev. So when you come to produce a build for production, you're using Rollup. I believe it's a Rollup plugin now. So your final production build is still a Rollup build. Probably even more of a Rollup build than what Sapper uses right now.
That's actually really nice. Yeah. Thank you.
There were also, I think, in Sapper sometimes some confusion around like, do I do things in Rollup or Webpack, or do I do them in Svelte preprocess? So, if you want to use post CSS, for example, like there's multiple ways of setting that up, and some work better than others. And so, hopefully some of those stories we can make be a little bit clearer with SvelteKit. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things I'm most excited about in Svelte Core is source maps for preprocessors. So Svelte has had source map support from the beginning, but if you wanted to use a preprocessor, then you lost source map support. It was something that just got implemented in one of the recent versions. And there's a number of kinks that we've been working out over the past few weeks. And so, that's been entirely driven by the community. There's a couple of folks, Milahu and Dimitraj, that I'm terrible with the usernames. I probably got those slightly off, but there's a lot of issues today where, like, if you try to use TypeScript with Svelte, where the source map support just isn't great because TypeScript support with Svelte is so new. I think that you'll see that get fixed in the next couple releases. So there's going to be the next release of Rollup plugin Svelte and the next release of Svelte will both have additional fixes. That supports getting to be fairly good today, but there are places where things are off by a line here and there, which makes it difficult to use. And so that's gotten really quite a bit better over the past weeks, and that's going to be really exciting for a lot of users.
That sounds great.
I actually had no idea. I always saw in the pre-process code, there actually is a way that you can modify the source map and send it back to Svelte. I had no idea that it didn't work.
Yeah, so there is, and so Rollup plugin Svelte executes the preprocessor and executes the Svelte compiler, and it needs to hand the source map from the preprocessor to the compiler. And that was like a one-line change to make, but it just hadn't been implemented yet because it was really a pretty new feature. And so that was kind of like one of the final pieces that we needed. Like, we built these features independently, and then we just needed to hook them up. And so that's going to be in the next release of Rollup plugin Svelte, 7.01 or 7.10, or I don't know what the version number is going to be, but whatever's after 7.
So there's
only programmers debate what comes after 7.
So this is like there's a lot of overlap here with the language tools. It sounds like. Are you working like closely with Simon and whoever else is working on those?
Yeah, I think that
things
for this particular feature, like it hasn't really overlapped with language tools a whole lot, but Simon's helped a lot with a lot of the TypeScript improvements. Like in Svelte Core, he's been adding type definitions. And so I think when you combine these different features together, the type definitions and the type definitions that are in Sapper as well, and the source map support, the TypeScript story is going to really start to be a first-class story and become a much, much better experience.
That's awesome. A lot of people want TypeScript, from what I understand.
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
Okay, so there's this Svelte loader thing. What is that a Webpack thing?
Yeah, so I think probably all the maintainers use Rollup, which means that unfortunately the Webpack plugin had gone unloved for a little while. But Webpack 5 recently came out and spurred a bunch of interest from the community in updating that. And so we've recently gotten a good chunk of PRs into that project. And so the next version is going to support Webpack 5. It's going to support Node 14, and it's got a completely rewritten HMR implementation. There was kind of HMR implementation in there from the Svelte 2 days that never worked with Svelte 3. And so that was always kind of like the top issue in that repo, that the README says there's HMR support and there really wasn't. And so that's going to be a really exciting release for Webpack users, which I think is probably like, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40% of Svelte users. It's a sizable chunk.
That's
so it's
a lot.
I think it's going to make life a lot better for a lot of people. And so, a big shout out and thank you to all the folks from the community. Again, that was another thing that was entirely community driven. So, Non25 and Smitty VB and Rixo, got a lot of those changes in and really drove that whole process. I know no one's
pretty
real
funny
names
because
either.
It's pretty funny because those are their Discord chat names as well. So those are their names as far as I'm concerned.
Sometimes they GitHub names as well. Yeah, that's right. Swix.
Swix, yeah.
Swix.
Consistency is good.
Yeah. Right. So we have some questions from the community that we asked for. So we have one here. Should people with Sapper apps panic? Should they panic a lot or just a little?
I don't think they should panic at
Sapper.
all. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a fairly easy migration path. We've already migrated the example apps. Though externally, those are still on Sapper, but within the SvelteKit repo, those have all been migrated to SvelteKit, and that was a fairly straightforward process. We need to put together a migration guide still, but that's something that we'll do. And actually, the real world sample app, Rich basically completely rewrote because it was never really written in the way that Sapper apps should be written. So that one was a bit of a larger change just because there was a whole bunch of other improvements that got made there. But if you look at the Hacker News sample app, that was pretty straightforward to port. That was a pretty small set of changes. And so there's so much of the Svelte code, all the client side Svelte code, especially is basically the Sapper code. And so the code that's going to be in your project hasn't really changed. Most of the changes in SvelteKit are all they're in the development server and they're on the server side and Sapper's or SvelteKit's internals. And so, it's the things that users don't really touch in their projects that are changing the most.
Cool. That sounds good. Another question is, so from a user, how can they help out, pretty much help the core team develop these things?
I think that what Svelte needs more than anything is people getting involved and helping us review issues and PRs. There's just a lot of them, and it's really hard to keep up with them all. And it's kind of a catch-22. We want to encourage more people to get involved so that we have more help with those things. But, it's so hard keeping up with them all to really get people involved with the projects, submitting PRs. And so I think it's really the review of those things. That's actually how I ended up becoming a maintainer. Was I kind of noticed that the Sapper PR queue had grown quite a bit. And I just went through and started leaving comments on all of them unprompted. I wasn't quite sure how that was going to be received, but luckily it was received well. A lot of those PRs have since been checked in, and there's still a lot more I know that we need to get to and get in. So we're trying to make it through that backlog. I think another thing is we recently put up an open collective, and so thanks to everybody that's contributed to that. I don't know that we've had a lot of communication about how we're going to use those funds, but I think one of the things that we're most interested in is bringing on somebody to help with triage of some of those things. And that might not happen immediately, but as we grow a bit of a balance, that's one of the areas that we're going to be looking in is probably that and ways that we can accelerate Svelte's development.
Makes sense.
And I think, in terms of reviewing PRs, like that's also a similar way to how I got in, reviewing issues and sort of, figuring out if they were real issues or not issues or whatever else. I think that reviewing PRs is super useful, giving the code a try. The Hub project by GitHub makes it really, really easy to actually just test those PRs out. You check out Svelte, you use Hub to change the PR, and then you just basically run your test project against the PR. So it is quite easy to get set up, and then it's just figuring out if it works or not, really. So it's all stuff that goes to a contributor's guide, but again, it's also something that we haven't really got around to building properly yet.
I think
that sort of stuff's super useful.
Yeah, I think one of the things we'd really love is to have kind of a guide to the code and a contributor's guide that, right now we've got the contributor's guide that kind of has some guidelines about how to contribute to the project, but it doesn't really help you get ramped up on the code base. And there's really only like a pretty small handful of people, there's like 3 or 4 people that know the code base really well, because it is a pretty complex piece of code. And so, if anyone wants to take that on, we would love to have a better contributor's guide that kind of describes how the code base is laid out and like where the core pieces of functionality are and how they fit together and how they work to help get more people ramped up in the community to being able to contribute.
So a lot of times when I introduce Svelte to people, I actually send people directly to the code base to show like it literally, to prove there's no runtime, you just show the direct instructions. I forget the name of the functions, but it's literally, so most of the functions are just like one-liners, especially when you're doing like the DOM mutations. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one way of really getting familiar with the Svelte code base, but also just understanding Svelte fundamentally. You've inspired me. I want to go check out some PRs.
I think maybe like a video tutorial or screencast showing off like how you would review a PR or do anything more major rather than just like typing out issues could be something.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, we could put that on the YouTube channel for Svelte Society and just get more eyes to it. Might be an interesting method. But yeah, it sounds like there's a bunch of ways people can support, like monetarily, PR review, and then I guess more documentation on the code base quality.
Cool. All right. Do we have any other interesting topics we want to talk about before we head on to picks?
There's an interesting one here that's from the Twitter, but it's obviously not directly related to what we asked. But it's, when do you think the first roles as Svelte developers will start to appear? I mean, that's an interesting question because from what I understand, there's actually quite a few roles out there appearing now. I think Decathlon were most recently hiring. I'm not sure what they're hiring for. It could be a new team. It could be the existing site, because for those who don't know, the European Decathlon site, which is a huge brand in Europe and in the UK, in fact, their new site they rolled out in Europe is actually running Svelte. The one in the UK is running the legacy code base, it looks like. So maybe it's porting the UK one, I'm not sure. But they're absolutely hiring right now. Yeah, they're looking for Svelte developers. There's quite a few jobs in the jobs channel on Discord if people want to have a look through some directly related to Svelte jobs. I hired 2 Svelte developers. I hired literally 4 Svelte developers, so that's good fun. I'm not hiring at the moment, but maybe again in the future, with a bit of luck. But yeah, so there definitely are jobs out there. You just have to sort of know where to find them.
Yeah, I saw one by one of the largest Swedish universities looking for a Svelte developer. I think for some sort of like data viz, I'm not sure.
Nice.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I saw actually a school. I was seeing on Discord today. A school child, a 15-year-old, has actually said that his school's asked him to learn Svelte as part of a project. So that's super interesting. Yeah, I don't. He's come to Discord with his homework. Like, they've told me to do this with Svelte. How do I do it?
Is it the guy that has contributed a lot to the Svelte Society website lately, maybe?
I don't know. I don't think it is, because he was saying that you found Svelte very complicated. And I was like, well, kind of, yeah, but also not really. But it's weird though, because like if schools are teaching Svelte, that's awesome. You can't get better than that.
I guess I should also mention we keep track of notable production usage of Svelte on the Svelte Society Twitter. The typical ones that we always raise are like Spotify, Apple,
IKEA.
And IKEA, yeah.
IKEA.
And then I guess the data on the Dataviz angle, I guess the official government German government site for vaccinations is also in Svelte.
Yeah.
We have Square Enix and Disney. They had like Kingdom Hearts, and their landing page was in Svelte. There's like a bunch. Alaska Airlines, for their booking reservations, uses Svelte as well.
Really?
There's just a bunch, and these are just like the household names. Obviously, there's a bunch more. Schneider Electric
And Beyond, of course. They use Svelte.
Yeah, household names, exactly. But I'm not so much in favor of like Svelte jobs as just like web developer in general, and then just pick the tool that fits you. So I'm not too concerned about having Svelte in the job title.
Yeah,
I think the reason I like the concept of Svelte jobs is because if I were to stop doing Beyond and go and get a job, I really would want to just carry on using Svelte, and I would be looking for a specific Svelte job. I wouldn't be looking for a front-end job necessarily. I'd be looking for a Svelte job, just because it's something that I enjoy using every day. In fact, like I said before on the show, I'm sure it's kind of, I'm a full-stack developer. I could do any part of the stack, and I've always kind of avoided front-end. But actually, Svelte is the one thing that's brought me back into the front-end, thinking I really enjoy working on web UIs again, which is quite a statement, really, because it's still quite difficult. There's still browser compatibility to worry about and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's valuable to have a Svelte specific job, and I think that's a good thing that's being advertised in that way. We do.
Yeah. So
Hot takes.
I shall go first then.
Yeah, you should. It's your segment.
First. So this is where our ratings drop to 0, right? So
yep.
Code comments are bad. I just want to say that. Just all code comments, they should be banned. I have actually written lint rules in the past to remove them, so that you can't commit comments to your code base. The reason being, if you've got code comments in your code, it means that your code is violating one of Kent Beck's 4 main rules. Kent Beck is very prominent in this sort of stuff, but he is absolutely right in that code should show intent. And if you're writing comments to show intent, then your code is obviously not showing intent. And for me, that is a direct violation. So for those who don't know Kent Beck, have a look at him on Twitter. He's very, very prominent in software dev, been at it a very long time. A lot of the stuff, if you kind of follow his guidelines, makes a much, much cleaner, much more readable, much more sensible, logical code that's easy to maintain. So the priority map, as he does it, has 4 elements from lowest to highest. The lowest element in his map is fewest element, so that's the fewest component parts to make it a whole. The next 2 are no duplication. Obviously, DIY principle, don't repeat yourself. If you've got duplicated code here and there, it's a maintenance headache, it's a testing headache, and it could go out of sync. So remove that into a single place, abstract it, and call that. Again, within reason. It's not like a hard and fast rule, it's within reason. Then the second one on that level is reveals intention. Your code should read in that it reveals intent so that it makes sense to a person reading it. An additional downside to comments in this concept is that a comment is not testable. So a comment can go out of date when you write the code. Someone can change that code and not update the comment. There's no test to check that, so therefore the comment becomes invalid. If somebody's relying on that comment, which for comments to have a purpose, they'd have to rely on it, then it means that they're reading something which isn't true and potentially even does the opposite of what the code says. So they're a danger. If one comment is false or wrong, then, or even misleading, because it's the English language, right? Or whatever language, but mostly English. It can actually give the wrong impression about the code. It can say the wrong things, and then you end up misunderstanding the code and potentially writing bugs. So therefore, my notion here is that code comments are actually bad. And of course, his top element in this map is passes the tests. That's probably the most important of all. No matter anything else, as long as it passes the test, it's good. But back to code comments quickly. I believe that code comments are a code smell. I believe that code comments are a bad thing. They're damaging, and I genuinely believe that they do more harm than good. And that's my controversial. That's my. I can't even speak now.
That's a very good one.
Controversial opinion. I always get flamed on this for Twitter. I always get flamed non-stop.
Well, so just to be super clear, the entire Beyond code base does not have comments.
You are correct. Not a single comment.
Kind of amazing.
Well, it does make you write better code. It does make you write better code.
What about Svelte? Svelte PRs, like would you reject a PR over an excessive comment? Of you probably allow small comments.
The Svelte code, so the Svelte code base goes against a lot of the things that I believe in standards like linting and things like that. It goes against them. This is Rich's style, and it's the general maintainers agreed style. It's totally fine with me. Comments are the same, right? The notion is that comments are included in that code base, therefore I'm totally happy with comments being there. So I accept PRs with code comments in because it's not a violation. However, I will admit too, when I see Rich adding code to the code base, or even Ben adding code to the code base with loads of comments, I'm like, no! Internally, I'm having a fit, but I'm just like, it's the way. It is how it is. The weird thing about linting and about code style is it actually doesn't matter. What's more important is that everyone uses the same code style. So therefore, if this is the code style of Svelte code base, then I'm more than happy that we don't spend time bite shedding about whether you should use underscores in variable names or use camel case. I'm much more happy that we should just have a single style. And actually, I'll be honest, I'm actually coming around to underscores in variable names now, which is really not boding well with my team because we've always been against that. But hey,
progress.
Yeah,
we actually had someone comment on Twitter that the Svelte code base does have a bunch of underscore stuff, and it's quite readable. It's quite readable.
It is. It has underscores internally, and it uses camel case for its external API.
Yeah. Sorry, Kev, go ahead.
So any other unpopular opinions? I have a short one, but...
Well, I thought that was such a good one. It's hard to follow. Ben, you have one?
Yeah, I'll jump in and say, don't use SvelteKit yet. Just use Sapper for now. I know people are really excited to use SvelteKit, but you're just going to cause yourself more trouble. There's no documentation for it yet. There's not really any support for it yet. Like the things are still changing. And so I know like people are starting new projects and they're like, oh, I don't want to have to migrate, but it's not going to be a painful migration, and it'll be a lot less pain than using a project that we don't really intend for people to use yet.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah, it's popular here.
Yes. So I have a small unpopular opinion. Maybe it's not unpopular actually. It's hard to read Tailwind. I started tinkering with Tailwind, and it's actually quite okay. It was better than I thought, but reading it is really, really rough. Like having the HTML full with classes.
So your opinion is that it's hard to read Tailwind?
Yeah, I guess so.
Wow. That is the burning fire pitchforks at dawn.
Well, it's not so much that it's hard to read. It's more like it's just like a jumble of everything in the HTML, and I get confused. So I'll probably learn. Who knows?
I'm no Tailwind fan. I would probably be inclined to agree with you. It's class overload, but yeah, I can see that definitely causing some controversy.
It is nice though. Like for this one project I've tried it on.
Ben, what's your take on Tailwind?
I haven't used it yet.
You probably have an opinion though. You probably looked at it.
I haven't yet.
I'm trying to bait you, and you didn't bite. You didn't take the bait. You didn't take the bait. All right. I won't comment on Tailwind stuff, but I can jump in with the last unpopular opinion, which is that serverless is killing static sites. And I just realized that like there's really no more reason to have like a traditional static site generator that pre-generates thousands and thousands of pages. Like we used to benchmark Sapper on like how long does it take to do 30,000 pages. Like it doesn't matter anymore. And I realized this partially because of SvelteKit, partially because of Remix in the React ecosystem and Next.js. Everyone is just moving towards serverless as like the rendering unit. And I think that's why, like, the reason we had static site generators churn out so many sites was because compute was, centralized, and we needed to run the build process and then distribute it on a CDN. And that model worked. But now that basically every hosting platform has serverless and it's super easy to spin up, then we can just like run the page generation on demand and cache it. And there's no need for a static site generator anymore. So that's my unpopular opinion.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with that opinion, because obviously, like, generating on the fly is effectively static site generation. You're generating something into a cache. You're just not doing it at the time of inception.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing it kind of on request for the first request. That makes sense. If you've got a sensible caching strategy and a way to clear that cache, then yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how profound this is, but like, obviously I used to use Gatsby a lot, and Gatsby is like, if this insight is true, then Gatsby is kind of dead. So is like every other static site generator. Like it's fine to still use it because it's like a tried and tested code base. But just the experience of like updating a page and not having to wait for a billion minutes for it to rebuild, it makes it a superior paradigm already.
Absolutely.
All right, picks. What do you have?
Picks.
We got to go fast now.
Right. So
Gotta run.
My pick is the Tado smart heating system. So when I had my boiler fitted, I asked the fitter to fit me this, like, the cheapest possible wireless receiver because I was going to get smart heating, and then I didn't for like 3 years.
Such a random pick.
It's not that random. It's pretty good, I think. But anyway, so I've had more random, surely. No, so I was going to get fitted. I never did anything about it, and then one day this cheap smart heating system, this cheap wireless heating system, which I will name Sailors. Don't ever buy that crap. It actually just broke, just stopped working one day, and I was sat in the middle of December in England in the cold, which is like 1 degree or less Celsius. So my friend had Tado. I looked it up. It is the most amazing, beautiful onboarding system. Products come with a how to set product up, and usually it's varying levels of how good it is. This product is literally you as a layperson going and adapting, opening your boiler and fiddling with the wiring, right? And yet they managed to talk you through it on a smartphone, step by step, every single detail, what's important, what was occurred, what you should label, everything. I did the whole thing in like 12 minutes or something, end to end. I took my boiler apart for the first time ever. I took all the circuitry out of my boiler. I started unscrewing things and rewiring it, and God knows what. I was doing crazy stuff, right? And it's totally fine because Tado is so watertight in setup. You tell it what boiler you've got. It even shows you a picture of your entire setup. And I thought I had a pretty random setup. Specific boiler, specific water heater, specific wireless transponder, which is some NAF Sailors product, whatever it is. It had pictures of all of it and how to remove it, how to fit their stuff. Fantastic. So the product alone is great. It's wonderful. It's great smart heating, but the setup is just, it's something that people should aspire to, is how to onboard people onto a product. So my pick is Tado Smart Heating.
Wow. Well done.
Ben, do you have one?
That's hard to follow up. I'd say my pick is Narcos Mexico. That's the, I know everybody's been watching Tiger King and that chess one, but
Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit.
Wait,
so I'm all about Narcos Mexico.
So I watched the original Narcos. Is it just like with different actors? Like what?
Yeah, it's the same
related
thing, but
in any way?
it's about the Mexican cartels.
I need to watch. This sounds great. I need to watch this.
The first Narcos is really good.
It is.
Definitely drew me in.
Sounds good.
So my pick is something called Kitty. It's a terminal replacement. It's pretty nice. You can customize it. That's pretty much it.
As in Kitty, right?
Yeah, like a small
Nice.
cat. It's actually very very nice. It's GPU rendered, which is better than those Electron thingies.
It's just what you need for a terminal, right?
Yeah. Need to render some stuff.
Yeah.
I guess I'll pick Audacity. I don't know if you guys have messed around with it, but it's open source audio editing software, and it's surprisingly powerful. I've never really, I've used it before to edit minor clips, but then I took some time over the weekend to learn how to set levels and like mix clips together and like post process like pops and stuff like that. It's really powerful and it's open source and it's very performant and just an amazing piece of I guess open source collaboration. And I didn't know. I don't know the history behind this, but I'm curious to learn more. But it's just really good software to use.
In other news, nice. Shawn will be our new editor of the podcast, right?
All right.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. So that's all the picks then, and that's it for this time. Thanks, Ben, for coming on and talking about Sapper and SvelteKit. And
thank you, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
Everything else. Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you guys next episode. Bye.
Bye.